Good morning, Chicago Cubs fans. We are back with another edition of Cubs Daily. My name is Steven Ryan. We're going to talk about the Japanese superstar slugger, Munetaka Murakami. He has officially been posted. We're going to talk about some potential trade partner teams that the Cubs could maybe dive into. As we know, that is kind of how the Cubs generally operate. We don't necessarily go with the big free agent splash. Could a former Brewer be an assistant to this Cubs rotation staff in the future? And then we'll cover some more awards. But before we get into all that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to give you all a big thank you from the bottom of my heart for continuing to show support to the channel, the comments, the likes, and of course, if you have already subscribed, you are the best. And if you are new, make sure you guys are hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. Please share your thoughts down in the comment section below. I am enjoying reading all the comments, the interactions between you guys. It is an absolute pleasure and joy. So let's hop right on into it. Murakami has officially been posted to the major leagues by his team in Japan. Now there is a 45-day window where all 30 MLB teams will have a chance to negotiate with the Japanese team that has him. He is a slugger, left-handed power-hitting third baseman. He more like projects as a designated hitter, but he is a big free agent. He has a lot of potential to shine over here in the major leagues. He shined in the World Baseball Classic a few seasons ago, and now he's ready to take step in the big leagues. Now, again, this is a name I've mentioned a couple times here on the channel as a name to potentially look out for. I know Matt Shaw did a very solid job at third, but this Cubs offense is going to need some oomph, so to speak, especially if we are losing Kyle Tucker. And again, I understand why we're letting Kyle Tucker go. I'm at peace with letting Kyle Tucker go, but you still have to replace what Kyle Tucker provided, and that was stability in the lineup in the sense of approach at the plate. Kyle Tucker, every time at bat, you knew he was going to at least see 4 to 6 pitches. You knew he was going to work the count. You knew the pitcher feared him. You knew the pitcher was going to pitch around him, which opened the door for Seiya to have a career here, for Pete Crow Armstrong to have a breakout season. Even Michael Busch, who led the team in home runs, developed because Kyle Tucker was batting behind him. I'm not sure if Murakami's that answer. I don't think the Cubs are going to sign Murakami. I want to make that perfectly clear, but it's another one of those options that could potentially the Cubs should be considering. I'm not sure what he's going to garner, what he's going to be estimated to be worth. He still has a lot to prove over at the major league level. He does, apparently his glove, is not necessarily a strength of his, and I'm not sure if I just wanted to throw him in at third, especially with the way the job at Matt Shaw did at third. Now, I'm not sure if Matt Shaw's bat is ever going to catch up to Murakami. I'm not even sure how well Murakami's going to hit, but it is a big name prospect coming over to the States, and I just hope the Cubs are doing their due diligence by making a phone call just to see where Murakami's head is at. Generally speaking, the Japanese players do lean more towards those West Coast teams, but the Cubs have some influence in that sense. We've gotten Seiya Suzuki, Kosuke Fukudome has come over. We didn't immediately recruit Yu Darvish, but we did trade for Yu Darvish. So we do have some Japanese ties. But again, does Murakami fit the mold of this lineup? I'm going to say no on that front. I think generally speaking, a lot of people would say yes. Adding a big power bat is always a good thing. I was thinking about it today. Again, we have a lot of Cubs fans that are a lot older than me, so please share. Billy Williams is the name that comes to mind, a power left-handed hitting player. But Billy Williams was a really good hitter, right? A good pure hitter of the baseball. He did hit a lot of home runs. Michael Busch led the team this year in home runs, which was more of a shock than anything. I'm not sure how many people would have put that on their bingo cards. But during my lifetime, predominantly right-handed hitters succeed more at Wrigley Field, right? We're talking about the late 90s to 2000s. We're talking Sammy Sosa. Even in the middle of the 2000s, right? Aramis Ramirez, Derek Lee, Moises Alou. And into the 2010s, Chris Bryant predominantly led the team in home runs. Rizzo had his few years, of course, but it kind of feels like, and if you guys know how Wrigley sits, right field is the lake, And that's where the wind blows in and howls in. It really hurts left-handed hitting. Now, if you're a right-hander, it does hurt, but not as badly, right? It kind of puts more hook on your ball necessarily than knocking it down. So I think if the Cubs are going to go get a slugger this offseason, we really need to find a right-handed slugger. That's where I think this team would do much better, and that's why I've suggested names like Pete Alonso. I know Pete Alonso's odds are is not coming, but I think Pete Alonso would have better success at Wrigley than a big power left-handed bat like a Murakami. Now, if Murakami can come to Wrigley and hit for average, I'm never going to say no to that, right? We're never going to say no to a guy who could square up the baseball. But again, I'm not sure if the Cubs are going to be totally all in on him. And I heard it on the radio the other day. If you're all in on a guy as a team, generally the Cubs are out. We're not that emotionally all in on players in that sense. Again, the richest contract we've ever given out was Jason Hayward in 2016. And if you talk to a lot of Cubs fans, it's the worst contract we've ever done. So, moving on to more fun topics, let's talk about potentially who are some suitable trade partners for the Cubs. We've talked about it, and I'm going to talk about it again. We know that lockout is looming in 2027. Now, we all say the Cubs are going to be cheap. Generally speaking, that's fine and dandy. But the Cubs are not the only cheap team in Major League Baseball. No. I think a lot of other teams are going to try and have their payrolls all slick and clean entering that 2027 season, pending that lockout, of course. They want to keep the salary as low as possible, so there could be some gems along the way for the Cubs to look into. I've taken a look here at some arbitration-eligible players in 2026. Let's take a look at that top of the list, right? Well, look who's leading that charge. It is our main man, Tarik Skubal. Tarik Skubal is the kind of guy the Cubs need. Now, again, Tarik Skubal is the kind of guy any Major League Baseball team needs. I'm going to be very candid about that. But there's a lot of other good, fun names in there as well. Like Jesus Luzardo. That's a guy the Cubs looked at. He doesn't fit my mold necessarily because he's another tall left-handed pitcher. But hey, credit to Jesus. Logan Gilbert, stud in Seattle as well. I think Seattle's going to re-sign him, of course. But again, we got to start thinking long-term here, right? Former Cub Isaac Paredes is down there. Mr. Bednar is available. Stephen Kwan, that's a contact hitter the Cubs could look into as well. Alec Boehm. He kind of had a little bit of a down year, but again, maybe he could fit what the Cubs are trying to look for. Brady Singer, he's going to be ARB eligible as well. And again, when you're looking at the team, I'm trying to do my best to look at teams like, look, the Nationals, right? Josiah Gray, he was a top prospect for the Dodgers a few years back. When you're looking at, Tampa Bay Rays, oh my God, they're a farm system. Look at all these names: Kevin Kelly, Manuel Rodriguez, Brian Baker. They're going to try and unload some of these guys, right? Mariners, they're generally a smaller payroll as well. They're probably not going to keep all the likes of Matt Brash and Gregory Santos and Jackson Kowar and Logan Gilbert. These are names the Cubs could definitely jump on in if the timing is right. Johan Ramirez was solid for the Pirates as well. Just again, you got to look at these small market teams because they're going to want to unload as well. Max Meyer is a prospect for the Miami Marlins. There he is, Edward Cabrera. Those players are going to be seeking bigger paydays, and the Cubs could definitely jump in on that, right? Look, we have Steele and Reese McGuire and Eli Morgan and blah, blah, blah. That don't matter. But the Athletics is another team I think about, right? Luis Medina, Ken Walchuk, J.J. Bleday. Is there a move there for the Cubs to be had? And, I think yes. I think that's a relative possibility with the Cubs, right? We like to make those ancillary trades to supplement our team. So you got to start thinking about that going into the offseason as well, because yes, teams are planning for 2026, but they're also planning for that lockout and beyond. And we also know that the cheap teams, you can include the Cubs in that, even though we spent $200 million on a payroll, the cheap teams do want to be cheap as well. So there's talent to be had everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We got to think about that. Another guy I was kind of thinking about here in the long run is, how about former Brewer? Brandon Woodruff. They did, I believe, extend the qualifying offer to him, so I'm not quite sure if he'll accept that. He might, because it's going to be a pretty valuable qualifying offer. But if he declines it, I think he's a great candidate for the Cubs. I would love to have Brandon Woodruff. Is he the ace of a staff? No. But is he a hard-throwing right-hander? Yes. Would he want some revenge on the Brewers? Sure, maybe. I don't know. He probably doesn't have a negative thing to say about them. But Craig Counsell knows him, obviously. He can come back on down. He's seen the work we've done with Colin Ray. Obviously, I think the Cubs pitching staff philosophy here is, we want to have as many 3 to 5 inning arms as possible to keep our bullpen as fresh as possible. And I think Brandon Woodruff would be on a nice, fun prove-it deal, maybe a 1-year deal at the most. But again, I don't know, but I would definitely welcome Brandon Woodruff to this team. Obviously, health has a major concern with him. He has not been healthy. But again, sometimes you just got to take a flyer on a guy, right? Matt Boyd, all-star season for us. He has had a litany of injuries throughout his career. And, Brandon Woodruff, has been very, very solid throughout his major league career, especially as a Brewer. And I think he's only been a Brewer. But, this year he was 7-2 with a 3.2 ERA. There's no reason that the Brewers should not want to bring him back. His career ERA is 3.1, 53-28, 2-time All-Star. He's just been bolts for the Milwaukee Brewers. He even went yarding, I think, in Game 7 or Game 1 of the NLCS back in 2018 when he was with the Brewers. So that's another name I would strongly consider if I were the Cubs. I think he's probably going to go back to Milwaukee, probably accept that qualifying offer, since the Cubs are going to be nowhere near interested in paying him that. But again, maybe a 1 year. Again, if he doesn't accept that qualifying offer and the Cubs want to offer him a 1-year, $15 million prove-it deal, I think he would be an excellent addition to the staff. Obviously, injuries play a factor when you start looking at these guys. You got to look at their medical history, but there's a mutual relationship there, right? Craig Counsell knows him. He knows Craig Counsell. Doesn't have to move his family all too far. It's more in the cards than we'd probably like to think. Honestly, in my opinion. All right, let's round out today's edition of Cubs Daily with the Team Gold Glove Award. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to the Chicago Cubs. I believe this is the second time in the last 6 seasons that they have won this award, and they are the winners. A great team defense. That was the one quality I loved about this team all season long, was their ability to play defense and keep them within games. Of course you're going to lose games. Of course you're going to give up runs. But, man, they were second in defensive runs saved. They prevented it takes you all the way back to the beginning of the year, right? Dansby Swanson, right? He had that fake throw to first, and he drew out that tag to win a game in Arizona. And then you go all the way through to the playoffs, right? The playoffs where Dansby, in that first game against the Padres, right? It looked like the Padres were going to be able to kind of expand the lead a little bit. They had a 1-0 lead. I think they had runners on first and third with nobody out, and then Swanson made an over-the-head catch in shallow center field, prevented that run scoring from third, and then I think they got out of the inning with nothing else, and then back-to-back home runs by Suzuki and Carson Kelly, and Cubs win Game 1, man, and it's because of these little ancillary defensive plays, right? That's Dansby Swanson. If you've been a Cubs fan for a long time and you've watched Nico Horner since the day he's walked into Wrigley Field, he's been nothing but a Gold Glove, right? And then, of course, who else are we going to talk about but Pete Crow Armstrong? He had the most catches this season with the lowest probability rate. The superstar potential on Pete Crow Armstrong is through the roof. I'm excited to watch how he grows this season. But the fun thing about defense, ladies and gentlemen, is we know that the Cubs are going to be good again next year defensively, right? We're not losing much. I know Seiya had that little wonky 2023, 2024 stretch, but he's sturdy defensively. He's never been too much of a problem in my eyes, but pretty much everyone else was up for a Gold Glove this year, right? Ian Happ won a Gold Glove. Shaw was up for a Gold Glove. Michael Busch has been sensational at first base. What a claim by Jed Hoyer on that front as well. So Cubs win Gold Glove again, and I expect multiple participants to be in that conversation next season as well. So that's going to do it for today's edition of Cubs Daily. Again, if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and let's keep growing together, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to be going to spring training before we know it. But I just want to wish everyone a very early happy holidays and happy free agency. I'll be bringing you guys daily updates Monday through Friday. And if anything breaks on the weekend, I got you. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And we'll talk soon.